Welcome to Booking It to Financial Freedom, show number 9.
The majority of Americans, unfortunately, aren't tracking their spending. They think they are. They might have a general idea of their budget, but they're kind of constantly overspending and not realizing that. After listening to this book, I went back and I looked at all of our budget. I got a new software to track our budget, and then now I'm starting to compare it every month to what I think we're spending to what we're actually spending.
Very recently, the banking institution made over $35 billion in fees.
If you are using a credit card for your monthly expenses and you are paying that credit card off every month so that you're not incurring any interest or fees, you have now racked up points for either cash back for future purchases, amazing vacations that would have normally cost them thousands of dollars for free just by using their credit card.
Start soon. And if you haven't started, the best time to start is now.
Welcome to Booking It to Financial Freedom, where we explore literature from some of the most successful experts in their field to help you build a blueprint for personal growth and financial freedom. Join us as we examine a new book every month and break down key concepts to help you get out of the rat race and on track to start building a life better than you ever imagined.
Hey everyone, I'm your host, Amanda Schneider, realtor and investor, and I'm here with my co-host and teammate, Jamie Booth. Hey Jamie.
Hey Amanda, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I am great. Excited to be here to cover this book.
It's a good one.
Yep, on episode 9, so we're into our third book now.
Yep.
It's pretty exciting stuff.
That is exciting.
And I'm excited to cover this book because it's a lot of fun. I think a lot of our listeners are going to get a lot out of it, depending on how advanced they are in their financial journey. But the author is fun, sarcastic.
It's an easy listen for sure, which I think is a little bit different than Start With Why was great, but it's real meaty. There's a lot of stuff in there.
Yes, it's not quite as vibrant as this one is. I guess the way to say that.
For sure. And just kind of some of the tidbits that I got out of the book is, the majority of Americans, unfortunately, aren't tracking their spending. They think they are. They think they might have a general idea of their budget, but they're kind of constantly overspending and not realizing that. So what this book is really teaching us is to know exactly where our money is going. And even myself, I've been investing since 2016 and I feel like I'm pretty good with money. But after listening to this book, I went back and I looked at all of our budget. I got a new software to track our budget. And then now I'm starting to compare it every month to what I think we're spending to what we're actually spending. And so, even more experienced people can get a lot out of this book. And for me, I think that's going to be a bit life-changing because I'll have a bit more control over what's happening in my life.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's the hard part for a lot of people is it just seems tedious or too much work or whatever. But it's super important that you do these things or you're really not ever going to grow your wealth. Yeah.
And one thing that he really stresses in this book is that once you set it up, yes, it's tedious in the beginning to set it up, but once you do, it's automated. Yep. And after that, it's maybe an hour a month that you need to spend making sure your money's going in the right places.
Yeah. And, we won't go into the scripts and stuff, on the podcast, but that's another thing I like about the book is he literally has scripts on how to talk to credit card companies, how to talk to banks, how to get, discounts or have fees removed, all that stuff. So he's got a lot of scripts in there, how to directly deal with these situations. And it's just amazing stuff.
One of the points I really like that he makes in there, which, I hope we're not offending anyone, but he really talks about the victim culture in the beginning, in the introduction. And he just basically says, if you want to change your life, if you want to get control of your finances and to build a rich life for yourself, then you need to stop blaming other people for the situation you're in. And that's just so true. I don't want to get into any political discussion or culture or anything, but, more and more it seems like people aren't taking responsibility for themselves. And in a very blunt way, he just says, get off your butt and start doing something. So
there's a lot of very straightforward remarks in there, which, some people need to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess let's go ahead and get into some of the key components. So what we're going to cover today is chapters 1 through 3, if anyone's following along. So this is our first episode on this book. So if you haven't, started it yet, you have plenty of time to catch up. But the very first chapter, he talks about optimizing your credit cards. And I love this chapter because it is credit card hacking 101, which is such an important step that a lot of people don't utilize that can really change your life and allow you to do a lot of things you didn't think was possible, like traveling or getting cashback rewards or all the things just by wisely using your credit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He emphasizes that not to be shy when it comes to credit cards. He says, I think he uses it several times, is to go on the offense, right? It's very important. Like credit cards are taboo, and a lot of people probably try to avoid them completely, but they don't understand how important it really is to their overall financial fitness, and being able to manage those. So he goes into how to manage them, the basics: pay your balance off every month, get the best rates. He talks about which credit cards you should avoid, which ones you should get, all that good stuff. So, there's a lot of information in there. It goes, from the super basic all the way up to travel hacking and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I would definitely, obviously, if you haven't yet, read the book and take some of the scripts that he gives you to call your credit card companies and maybe get a reduced interest rate, things like that. But the basics with it is our society kind of makes us fearful of debt. You hear reports all the time of how much debt Americans are in, et cetera. And it's just because they don't understand how to wisely use credit. But if you are using a credit card for your monthly expenses and you are paying that credit card off every month so that you're not incurring any interest or fees, you have now racked up points for either cash back for future purchases, money towards travel. He gives tons of examples in the book of people who have done amazing vacations that would have normally cost them thousands of dollars for free just by using their credit card points.
For some of the people who aren't aware of the travel hacking scene, that is an entire episode on itself. We actually have a friend of Jen's that they do that all the time. And they are traveling nonstop for free. It's amazing what you can do if you do it right.
Yeah.
And like I said, the travel hacking side, that can get really complicated because you're rotating credit cards.
Sure.
You have to spend, a lot of them have, you gain 50,000 bonus miles if you spend X amount of dollars within, like a certain amount of time. The hard part about is making sure that you're not spending extra money. You don't get the credit card and go spend $5,000 just to get the points, right? You have to incorporate it in your day-to-day life. And then you have to start rotating cards and stuff. It's really, really cool and fun if you can manage to do it, but it's more advanced. But,
it is. But the first thing is just understanding your budget and what your normal monthly expenses are. And there is no reason you can't put most of those expenses on a credit card. My mom is like a perfect example because she has had the same credit card for like 20 years of her life. She's only got a $5,000 spending limit because that's all she wants because she's afraid of credit. And so she was, I tell her all the time about these trips we take where we don't pay anything. We just use our points from our credit card. And she's like, yeah, I get so frustrated with mine because all I can do is once I get so many points, they have like magazine subscriptions or, little trinkets she can buy or something. And I'm just open up another credit card. Right. Like you have wasted so much money, so much free money that is out there by not using that. Ramit
emphasizes that in the book as well. Make sure you shop around for the best credit cards that work. There's definitely some that are just horrible. He emphasizes the worst thing you can possibly do is get like a department store card.
Yes,
they're like some of the most
stores.
predatory credit cards out there. They have next to nothing for rewards. They hammer you with fees. They hammer you with all this other stuff. Like just stay away from those 100%.
Yep.
He advises, some people, especially when they're real deep into the travel hacking and stuff like that, they'll have he uses an example. There's one client he has or whatever that has like 20 credit cards.
It's a lot to manage.
That's a lot to manage. Like most people would never want to do that. I would never want to do that no matter how advanced I was. But, he advises 2 to 3 credit cards is about optimal for most people. And one of them would be a cashback rewards card. The other one would be a travel rewards card, and then possibly like a business card or whatever, your general spending kind of stuff. So you can just utilize those in the correct way. So you go out for dinner with the family, you use your travel reward card because you're probably going to get bonus points for buying dining.
Yeah, because usually you get, some of them will say like 3 times rewards if you use it on restaurants or something. Yeah.
Or gas or,
Mm-hmm.
Whatever, whatever the rewards are. So you just try to optimize your spending that way. And then you pay off those balances at the end of the month.
Yeah, you were literally doing nothing different in your life other than using a credit card versus cash. And he said some of the advantages, in addition to using credit card, is one, it's a great way to track your spending, because if you're paying cash for things, you're not filling out a ledger every time you pay cash. But with a credit card, you can log in and you can always track all of your expenditures, see your balance right away of what you owe. And then also a lot of credit cards offer free warranty protection on things that you're buying. I know ours offers like phone protection, so we don't have to spend extra money for phone protection. They can give you car rental protection. So there's a lot of other like consumer protections that are given with credit cards too, which are invaluable.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So one thing I want to emphasize, though, is in this discussion of credit cards, he also talks about building your credit and how important that is, and how credit cards can help you to do that as long as you're using them wisely. So again, you're paying off your balance, or at least making your payments on time and making the minimum payment at the very least. But also you want to make sure that you aren't utilizing too much of your credit. So if you have a $10,000 credit card and you've put $9,000 worth of charges on there, now the credit card, like your FICO score and stuff, they're going to see that you've used 90% of your credit allowed.
Negatively impact your
Negative.
score.
That's one of the hugest things that can bring your credit score down. Yeah. And I see that with our clients all the time, the ones that have, credit scores below 600, and they're like, well, I've got one credit card, and, I have, again, $9,000 of $10,000 on there, but that's it. Like, I don't have any other debt. And it's purely because they don't have enough credit available to them. Right. That's affecting their credit score.
Yeah. For people who don't know, credit utilization rate is 30% of your overall score.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have all your cards maxed out, that's 30% of your entire score being negatively impacted.
Yep. And I think, I don't know absolutely off the top of my head, but I think you want to stay at least 30% or below for credit utilization to really get the highest score that you can. So, even if that means opening up a second credit card just to literally have that availability, mm-hmm. not using it, but now you've got $10,000 more of credit available while you pay off the other one, that is significantly going to help your credit score. So, and credit score is super important when you go to get an auto loan, if you want to go buy a house. So these are other ways that Ramit advises that if you're trying to live a rich life, you need to understand how these things affect your future purchases, because it can help save you money. So in our world, in the mortgage industry, if your credit score is, I think it's 750, 760 or above, you're going to get the best interest rate that's available. If you're at 700 or 650, you're going to pay possibly a quarter, 0.5% higher, which over the life of that loan is a lot of money.
Oh yeah. There's an example in the book. I'm trying to remember the exact numbers. I think it was on a $200,000 purchase. Mm-hmm. Someone with poor credit would have paid something like $460,000 for their $200,000 house. At the end of the day.
It was insane. It was more than twice as much.
Yeah, you were literally losing over $100,000 just mm-hmm. because of the impact of your credit score. Mm-hmm. And he talks about it a lot. It over your lifetime, right? That has huge impact. Credit card, car loans, mm-hmm. house loan, all of that stuff, that adds up over a lifetime, and it could cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars mm-hmm. in the long run.
Yeah. So, rather than trying to save money by not buying that cup of coffee at Starbucks or something, instead you need to wisely invest your money and understand how your credit affects future investments. And by making those decisions, you're honestly going to save yourself so much more money than cutting out that $5 cup of coffee every day.
That's another thing I like. He's says it fairly sarcastically, eat all or drink all the stinking lattes you want. It's that's small, small stuff. All right. You need to work on the big stuff. Yeah.
What I like about the reason he called the book "I Will Teach You to Be Rich" is because he's not saying, his advice is probably not going to make you, a billionaire. But what he's saying as far as rich, he's saying a fulfilled life for you. He said he is all about spending money where you find fulfillment, but then understanding you have to decrease your spending in things that don't matter to you. And he gave an example of a woman who loves shoes. And so I think she's got I don't know, it was a $5,000 a month budget for shoes or something ridiculous, but she lives in a small little studio apartment because she doesn't care about what her with the size of the space she lives in, what she cares about is shoes. So he's really encouraging readers to explore what's important to them, and that's where you put your money towards. Mm-hmm. So,
one of the other things he talks about as far as credit cards is like, he says that the credit card companies hate him because he does pay off. He's like,
yes,
whatever you do, be a bad credit card customer or something like that. It's like, because the credit card companies obviously aren't making any money off it.
Yeah.
So that's pretty funny the way he worded that one.
Yeah. Do you have any credit cards that you really like?
Anyone that gives me travel rewards.
Yeah.
Right. There's a lot of them out there that will give you 50, 75,000. I don't have any one particular credit card that I like, but I do like the whole idea of travel hacking and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to fly to Europe for free or whatever?
Absolutely.
Right? So, anything that is a great reward card as far as travel goes. And then, obviously all of the other things he talks about, low interest rates and all that stuff. So, and
definitely do your research, because credit cards can offer different promotions at different times. So they're not created equal. One credit card might offer you $100,000 or 100,000 miles, but all you have to do is spend $2,000, or another one might require you to spend $8,000 or whatever it is. So really do your research when you're ready to open up a credit card. We really like the American Express Platinum. Now, it does have a pretty hefty annual fee. If you're military, you get it waived. So when we first opened it and Lindsay was active duty, we got that fee waived, which was amazing. I think the fee is like a few $100s, but it is worth it. And that's something that Ramit talks about too, is just making sure if they do charge an annual fee, that the benefits outweigh that fee.
Yeah.
But like for the American Express, you get access to, what do you call it? Like when you're traveling and stuff into the lounges, you get free access to lounges, and almost every major airport has one.
As a matter of fact, I think he had a card specifically for that.
Did he? Yeah. And maybe it is the Platinum. I don't know. But they also give you Uber credits every month. They give you like $200 in towards your favorite airline, like just tons of things where the benefits totally outweigh the couple $100 a month, and plus just their everyday rewards that you're earning as you're spending.
Yeah, he basically said, if you don't really want to delve into the world of travel hacking and rotating cards and all that stuff, shop around for the best ones that give you, like you said, the 2 to 3. Specifically one that gives travel rewards and one that gives cashback rewards, and then utilize them correctly.
Yeah.
And then, another part of for the credit side of that is to hold on to those for long term, right?
Great
because for your credit, you want to see a history with it. So if you keep the same card you're paying off every month for 3, 4, 5 years, that will have a positive impact on your credit report as well.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of the trouble that some people who are advocates of the travel hacking is that if you are opening a bunch but then closing a bunch because you don't want to have 20 credit cards to manage, that's where it can kind of get you in trouble. So just, again, that's kind of the advanced. But to your point, pick a card, keep it open, and just use that for your daily spending.
And for anyone, and just random thought that popped in my head, because I have looked a lot into the travel hacking stuff. There's some credit. So there's if you go on some of the online places, they'll give you complete rundown of which card you have to open first, second. So some cards you can open, get the reward, and then you're not allowed to reopen that card again, ever.
Mm-hmm. Like Chase does that
in a lifetime. Mm-hmm. Yeah, some cards will just not let you open, but some cards you can open up, get the travel rewards, close the account, and then there's like a time period for you to reopen it. So the whole strategy is to rotate those cards through as often as possible.
Just know that if you're closing a lot of cards, it's going to hurt your credit for a little bit. So make sure if you're buying a house or want to get an auto loan that you're kind of timing that correctly, because it will give you a hit for a couple months if you're closing a lot of credit cards. But okay, anything else on credit cards?
Yeah, one more thing.
Yeah.
So people shy away from credit. Some people shy away from credit cards because they think, they're going to get themselves in trouble. But you have to realize that if you really want excellent credit, you almost have to have at least a couple cards, right? And you have to have the credit history, and you have to have the balance down low. You got to have your utilization rate, as low as possible. So, just keep that in mind as if you're in, trying to build up your credit and all stuff. One of the quickest ways you can help improve your credit is by getting a credit card and utilizing it correctly.
Yes. Perfect. All right. And then the next thing he talks about is beat the banks. So this is chapter 2. I don't know if we have a ton to say about this because some of this is kind of common sense, but we just want to make sure that, people do understand and they are choosing their accounts wisely, because fees can wreck you. And I know you have a story to share, which will be exciting. But
well, one of the funny things that he says, like, he's really upfront on, he hates Bank of America and he hates
Wells Fargo.
And I also hate Bank of America. And for the same reasons he talks about in the book, is because all these financial institutions, they make so much money off of overdraft fees. I think he said last year, maybe 2020, I don't know what year it was, very recently, the banking institution made over $35 billion in fees.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. And then, you know, for the same reason he hates Bank of America, I was a young soldier in the Army, and I had Bank of America for a couple of years, and I was very bad at managing my money. Constantly was getting hit with fees, overdraft fees, and it about ruined me at that one point. So
they're very predatory.
They're horrible. And I think you had a similar experience maybe with Bank of America. But
just with my credit card, it was just not a user-friendly experience.
No, not at all. So, you know, I think there's a lot of takeaway, because for this chapter, even though it's not a lot of, like, I don't know, necessarily actionable steps, but it's more of a kind of a mindset on how you deal with the banks, right? He talks about, you know, if you have a bank fee, or an example, you have an interest-bearing savings account, and say it's whatever percent, one late fee or one overdraft fee of $35 will offset anything you would ever get out of those off the return on interest. So basically shop around for the best deals in the bank account as well. It's not, you know, you would shop around the best deal for a car. You do the same. You basically look at your bank accounts the same way.
There is no reason you should be paying to have a bank account. There are plenty of great banks out there that do not charge anything for you to have a checking or a savings account. And you might start to get kind of wrapped up in the interest that you can earn on a savings account. But to your point, there's no bank that's going to offer you much more than 1 or 2 or 3% for savings. That's just where we are right now. And so 1 or 2, you know, even a couple months of a $10 fee because they charge to have a checking account that completely, like, as to your point, offsets any interest that you're earning. So if you are with a bank that is charging you for your checking or your savings account, call them and see if they'll waive it. Let them know you're thinking about leaving. And if they won't, then find something else. Even if it's a business account, there's like Ent Credit Union here that's local. They offer free business checking and savings. You should not have to pay to bank.
No, not at all. And that's the other thing that I really like about the way he's written a book. Obviously, we talk about him being Indian and how their culture is. They negotiate everything, right? And what people don't understand is, or may not understand, is that he says in the book, all fees are negotiable. All fees.
Yes.
So if you have an overdraft fee, don't be afraid to call the bank. He even has a script in there. Hey, you know, Mr. Bank Teller, Mrs. Bank Teller, I see I got a, you know, overdraft fee. And he talks about how a lot of banks, as long as you have a, you know, good reputation with them, they've been there for a few years, they're usually willing to waive fees like that. So
yeah, especially if it's not something that happens often. Obviously, if you're getting an overdraft fee every week, they're not going to. But if you've been with them for a while, don't be embarrassed because you made one mistake or something happen.
Yeah. So negotiate fees, and even the standard fees. You know, he has another example in the book where someone's been banking with someone for a long time. They have I don't know, maybe a minimum balance that they have to maintain. Call them up, and then if they're not willing to give you a, you know, whatever you want as far as the bank account looks like, change banks.
Yep. One thing I wanted to add here, which is not necessarily a point he makes, he does a little bit because he says he recommends having a checking account at one institution and a savings account at another institution. And that's because just of the psychology of literally having your money that you want growing in your savings account in a different institution, that makes it harder to access. So, you know, it may take a couple days to do a transfer, et cetera. And so it might just not be worth it. And you can let that money sit without seeing it. I also like to do a couple different checking accounts. And this is how helps me manage my money. I do it mainly for our businesses. So Like I'll have an operation account, I'll have a CapEx account, so capital expenses, so that when I log in, I immediately see this is the money I have saved for taxes, this is the money I have for day-to-day, and this is the money for anything major that's going to happen. So I actually got that from the book Profit First, which is maybe one we'll eventually address, but it's a really great way to see a snapshot of where your money is and if you're saving for certain things.
Yeah, I actually do the same thing with both my personal finance and my business side. So for my personal finance, I've opened up additional accounts. One is travel, like a travel account.
Yep.
And then I'll have, your standard savings. And then, I have another account for like my wife for like, just spending money, like that's your pocket money.
Yeah.
So just kind of automate. He talks a lot about automation and being able to sort yourself out that way. So once you get yourself in cruise control, it's easy. So money hits the bank. You can set up automatic transfers, so you get your direct deposit from your paycheck, goes into your main bank account, and then that money gets dispersed into the different accounts as you wish, right? And then it's a lot easier to see where your money's at.
He gave the kind of analogy of your main checking account where your paycheck goes into as being your email inbox. So it sits there for a little bit until you address it and then move it maybe into a subfolder or something.
Yeah,
so it's
exactly.
Yeah. And I think it's very motivational to see that, especially if you are saving for something like a vacation and you just continue to see that savings increase as soon as you log in. Like I don't know, it helps me save even more.
Yeah. On that note, and this it wasn't in this book, but it was something else I've read. Basically, you should plan your savings in your life for your next adventure, right? And it keeps you motivated to save. So set a goal of going to, say you want to fly to Paris in July, right? Basically, base your goal, it's like a short-term goal for savings on that. So it keeps you motivated. And then once you've done that, obviously you're going to have your long-term goals and stuff too, but to be able to, like you said, on the motivational side, right? Saving's not fun for a lot of people,
right.
But if you're saving for a particular goal, it can be a lot more interesting.
Yeah, it kind of ties back to your why. It helps kind of reinforce why you're doing what you're doing. All right, and then the last, in chapter 3, the last thing he kind of talks about is getting ready to invest. And so he talks a lot about investing into a retirement account. So the first thing he says is, definitely have your savings account for the things we just talked about. Things that are important to you, maybe you're saving for a house or to go on vacation, etc. But your savings account is not going to make you money. So now, once you've paid off debt, you've started to save money, now you need to transition into making your money work for you. So a great vehicle for that is investing. I disagree with him slightly as far as how much money he encourages in the book for people to put into a retirement account, because we're talking IRA, 401k, things that aren't accessible to you until you're 59 and a half. I don't overly love that. I think it's great to absolutely diversify. And so I would definitely encourage people, if you don't have a retirement account yet, open up one. But I would not put all of my extra money in there personally. Oh,
no, absolutely. I mean, diversification is key, right? So I would take 100% advantage of any match that your company is offering, and then once you've made that match, start putting your money somewhere else.
Yeah,
work hard for you.
Yeah, and the stock market is great, and he talks about that in this book. This is not a quick get rich quick scheme. This is a how do I build my wealth over time, which I agree to some points that he makes, but I don't want to wait until I'm 60, 65 to start enjoying life. I want my money to work harder for me now so that I can continue to enjoy it and not have to wait until I'm old or retired. Right. So, the stock market, again, is great, but it has a typical return of 8%. I think they said in the last century, 8% was kind of the average over the whole 100 years, which, again, is a great return, but it's not going to make you rich or really make you earn that extra money that might replace money that you're earning with your W-2. Yeah. So that's where the real estate investing comes in, investing into businesses, et cetera.
And that number is pretty spot on. I was literally just looking at my one of my wife's retirement accounts yesterday,
and
she was gaining like 8.4% or something.
Yeah.
So,
and again, it's great, especially because you really don't have to do anything. You pick a few stocks or have a financial advisor pick a few stocks for you, and it just grows for you. But if you want to be more aggressive and your goals are a little bit more aggressive, then you probably need to save some of that money to invest in something that's more aggressive.
I think the really important takeaway though is to invest, period.
Yep.
Even if it's $50, right? And the sooner you start, the better. Obviously with compound interest, you put a couple $100, you're like 21 years old, that gives you more time to grow. And so the sooner you start, the better, no matter how small the amount is. Even if you can only afford $50 a month, start investing sooner than later.
Yeah. In our last podcast, Chris Light talked about, he calls that investing in yourself. So people might think, well, I'm not spending it on myself. Like I'm not going out to buy a new car or buy clothes, but your future self will thank you as that compounding interest works in your favor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you hear that repeated over and over. Was it Richard Kiyosaki? Same thing. Pay yourself first, no matter what. Richest man in Babylon.
Yep.
Pay yourself first, no matter what. It is a saying that is 100% time tested and true.
Yes.
And you will not regret doing it.
And if you want to see the power of compounding interest, Ramit gives a lot of good examples in the book too, but it's literally putting $50 a month in or whatever you have, and years later looking at it and it's now thousands because of compound interest. So that's the power. But definitely pay off high interest credit cards before you start investing. That's something I wanted to really emphasize. You can potentially find a balance depending on how much you owe on a credit card. But if you have a credit card that's costing you 18% because you're not paying it off, that is not worth investing into a 401k or the stock market. That's only going to get you 8%. You've now lost 10%. So you need to really make that your goal, is to pay off any high interest credit cards first and then start investing.
And aggressively. Not the minimum payments.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty sure he's got a little diagram in there where someone bought a iPhone on credit, and actually, I think, he had an iPhone, maybe a computer. It was like a $2,000 computer or something like that. And if you were making minimum payments on it, it would take you like decades to pay off.
Yes.
It's
gross.
It's crazy when you look at, the reality of it.
And again, even if you only have an extra $100 to put towards it, that's also the power of compounding. The more you can pay down, the quicker it's going to be paid off and the less interest you're going to have to pay. So one thing I thought was really interesting too is he talks about a health savings account, which is something I'm not familiar with and something I would like to look into. But it's a great way to get your medical expenses paid for while that money is also growing for you in an account. Yeah,
I heard a bit about this on another podcast. I think it was on Choose Fi. They talk. I think they have an entire episode on health
we'll have
savings.
To look that up.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and read it or watch it again. Or
we'll see if we can find it and link it.
Yeah, it's a pretty good life hack, because I'm pretty sure you can do more with that money than just pay off your medical bills. You can basically use it as a vehicle, an investment vehicle. So,
well, and what I thought was so great about it is because Lindsay and I do a lot of like alternative medicine that regular insurance isn't going to cover. We see a functional medicine doctor, we go to a chiropractor, things like that. So if this money can grow in an account and I can pull from that to pay for my chiropractor, like that's amazing.
And I believe this money is tax-free too. I think you're right. I think the money that you put into the health savings account is
and it grows tax-free.
It grows tax-free. I believe that's what was special about this one.
Yeah, definitely do your research. We're not quite sure.
Nope.
Okay, and some of just the last couple things I wanted to touch on is something we said a little bit, but the easiest way to start investing once you're ready, once you've paid off those credit cards, is to set up an allotment. So every time a paycheck hits your account, or I'm sorry, not even before it hits your account, you set it up with your employer that $200 is going to be taken out of your paycheck into whatever account you want. Your employer can do that for you, so you literally never see it. There's no temptation for it to get into your bank account and be like, oh, well, I actually need that $200. It can be allocated before it hits your bank account, and that is the best way to start savings and investing. So, And if you do consult with a financial advisor once you're ready to start investing, make sure that they are a fiduciary. We talked about this a little bit on the podcast with Chris, but they need to be somebody that has your best interest in mind, not somebody that has, the stockbroker's interest in mind.
Right.
And they also should not be charging more than 1%, if that. And Ramit talks a lot about this in the book too, how even a 1% fee to manage your money over time can really devastate your account.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So do your research, and he gives some advice on other means you can use, like computer generated ways to manage your money that you don't actually have to pay a broker, et cetera. And, I don't have an opinion one way or the other, but just make sure that you understand any kind of fees that are associated with somebody to manage your money for you. So.
Yep. It's a very important thing to understand the difference between someone who's just managing your money and a fiduciary who actually has your best interests at heart.
Mm-hmm. Something else he says is that a lot of people are scared to invest in the stock market because they don't want to lose money. And I understand that fear, but again, that's just your insecurities driving you. And what he says in there is you literally can't afford to not invest, because if you never invest and you're just saving money, you're losing money through inflation.
Yeah.
So you will have much less money when you're ready to retire than you thought you had. So if you are investing, it is beating inflation and earning you money. So
yeah, it's a really important thing I think a lot of people just overlook inflation because it's, it doesn't really impact your day-to-day life, but it's a real thing.
It is.
It's a real thing. So, if you want to grow your wealth, you absolutely have to get a good return on your money.
Mm-hmm. And the sooner you start, the better. And the great thing about, if you do invest in the stock market is if there is a downturn, you can buy stocks cheaper. Then you can buy more stocks of what you had cheaper, and you just hold. That's why it's important to start young, because you can hold through any downturn in the market. And then the upside is now you've been able to buy stocks cheaper. When it comes back up, now you've got even more in your account.
Yeah. I mean, just doing anything proactively to invest. I think Chris talked about in the last episode about even buying a bank CD.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Buy an odd. You get a little bit higher interest rate on the odd length CDs. So,
like a year, 3 years or something.
If you have extra $1,000, instead of letting it basically rot in a savings account, at least do something with it. Go buy a CD that's going to give you 3.5% return. Your $1,000 might turn into $1,087
right
at the end of that period, but at least you've made, you're doing something.
You're hedging inflation.
More productive with the money.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, I want to give our listeners some action steps, but before that, do you have anything to add about investing? Do you feel like we've covered it all?
Start soon. And if you haven't started, the best time to start is now.
Yeah. Make sure, we touched on it, you did, but make sure that if you do have a W-2 job, make sure you ask your employer if they have matching. That is free money that you are just throwing away. A lot of, especially bigger employers, they will match your 401k. And, it depends what that looks like, but that's several $1,000s that you could not be taking advantage of.
It's insane if you don't take advantage of it. It's literally free money.
Yeah. Yep.
Who does not want to take $5,000 and have someone give you another $5,000?
You don't have to work overtime, nothing. It's just free. Cool. Okay, well, let's end with some actionable steps that Ramit talked about. So the very first one would be understanding your credit score. So you can get an annual free credit report at annualcreditreport.com. I think there's also freecreditreport.com. Just make sure that if it does ask you for a credit card, that you cancel it after you get your first free report. Otherwise, it'll charge you monthly. But get a handle on where your credit's at is the first thing. And then set up credit cards to do credit card hacking. So if you don't have credit cards yet, make sure you're opening those up. You can open up credit cards for as low as $500 a month, where all you're doing is spending $500 a month, paying it off. But if you do that for several months in a row, it will skyrocket your credit.
One thing I don't think we talked about is once you have those credit cards open, you have to utilize them, right? So if every credit card is different, but just having it there is not good enough, right? You have to actually use it. So I think he uses an example of he has like a reoccurring subscription for like audiobooks or something for like $12. So he just automates it through that credit card. So it's constantly being utilized and it's being paid off. So because if you don't use a credit card, eventually they're just going to shut the account down.
Yeah, and it's not doing anything for your credit if you're not using it and showing that you're responsible. And then a third step would be begin a debt payoff plan. And you said you've read Total Money Makeover.
I
right?
have read Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. If you're struggling with debt and just, basic money management, which I've been there, right? So I highly recommend that book. It's a very simple action. He's got it broken down exactly how you get your debt paid off. What's it called? The debt snowball or something like that. So it's a very simplistic manner to get your all your debts paid off. So,
and we've talked about Dave Ramsey before, I think too, we do love him for getting yourself in a good spot, getting your credit cards paid off. But after that,
he's 100% debt adverse.
Yeah. He doesn't even want you to have a mortgage on your house. So, so maybe some of that take with a grain of salt, but if you need to get out of debt, he's a great resource for that. And then the next step would just be setting up the right bank accounts, making sure you're not getting charged for your bank accounts, that you've got overdraft protection, that you're not paying absurd amounts for ATM fees, things like that.
Yeah, there are bank accounts out there that have no monthly fees, no minimum balance, overdraft protection, reimbursement for ATM fees, and stuff like that. It was another thing he talks about in the book where he hates Wells Fargo. And this is recent, I think, and maybe they still do this, but they were double charging for ATM fees. So you pay your standard $350 to whatever ATM it is, but if you did not use a Wells Fargo ATM, they would charge you the fee a second time.
So $7 to take out money.
Yeah, just to draw out money. That's absolutely insane.
Yeah. If you're a veteran or associated with the military in any way, definitely go to USAA. They are great for that. They even reimburse your ATM fees. Okay, and then the last step would be opening up a retirement account or some type of investing. Once you've got your debts paid off, you've got all the right accounts open, you've got your credit cards, now it's time to make your money work for you.
Yeah, I mean, investing does not have to be hard. You can open up just a standard S&P 500 account and just invest in the entire stock market, just automate that and let your money grow.
Yeah, Ramit has some things that he recommends, I think, for investing. So you can definitely get some pointers in chapter 3 as well.
Yeah. And I think one of the, last things to really emphasize, or what he emphasizes, is that everything is negotiable. He talks a lot about his Indian culture background and how they negotiate everything.
Yep.
So bank fees, if you don't like your bank services, negotiate. If not, move, I think he tells a story where they take it to such extreme that every time his dad would buy a car, it's like a week-long process, right. Literally negotiating with the dealership every single day for a week. And then he said after all of that, on the one car purchase his dad did, he asked at the end for $50 floor mats. Yeah. And they refused and he walked away. Yeah. So it's just take a hard stance on good deals.
No, I totally agree. Awesome. Well, I think that about wraps up this one. If you haven't bought a copy of the book yet, make sure you go out and do that, or listen to the audiobook because it is really fun to listen to. That's how I read it.
Yeah, highly recommended.
Yeah. But you want to take us out, Amy?
Sure. So if you liked what you heard today, please help us grow by leaving us a rating and review. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe, share, let your friends know about us, and please join us as we continue to cover the rest of the book this month.
Yeah, sounds great.
Awesome. Thanks.
Talk to you later.